All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessie Hildebrand from Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those who don't know, we're all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science to classrooms around the world. At the moment, we have 5 classes from across North America. We might get one more a little later, but I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves. We have Mrs. Hawkins' grade 7 class from New Jersey. Yay! Hi. We have Mr. Hatel's class from Merritt Island, Florida. Hello. Hello. We have Mrs. Baker's class from Raleigh, North Carolina, grade 7s.
Hey, just me and the teacher.
We just have her. We don't have the class yet, but they're coming. Okay. We have Mr. Orkoch's class from West Kelowna, BC, grade 2s.
Hey!
Excited grade 2s. I love it. And then we have Mrs. Metcalf's class from Salem, Illinois, grade 6s. Guys, all right.
Pretty nice.
The reason you guys are all here today, of course, is not for me. It's for our speaker. We're joined by Beth Healey, part of the European Space Agency. She's an expedition doctor. She got to live for a year in Antarctica over winter when there's no sunlight for about 100 days at a time. And her internet's a little having some troubles today, but she's joining us from the French Alps, but hopefully it works. Beth, without further ado, I'll turn it over to you. You'd ask that I share a video of what you do first, and then hopefully we'll get to you right after, okay?
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, let me do screen share and get this video up.
Bonnie knows what he's doing.
Share.
This is a problem. They do that.
Oh, we watched this. That's okay. We'll see it again.
At the end of the world, there's a place. Explorers call it the last great wilderness on Earth.
It's got it too slow. The network is too slow.
Visions of beauty and
These are pictures of Antarctica.
its stunning
There's state.
mountains of madness. Here, when
And I know exactly what it's telling you. It's telling you that when you are in Antarctica and it's the winter time, there is no way off of the island. You can't have a plane come in, you can't have a boat come in, you're stuck.
there is no indigenous population. Anyone trapped here when winter comes is out of reach, as no access or rescue is possible at all, be it by ship, airplane, or helicopter. On life or death, there is no escape from the ice. This is isolation. It is like you are on another world. Join the story of a lifetime. The story of taking the next step towards the stars. Of leaving this world and gaining another one. For by surviving here at the end of the world, we learn how to survive beyond our home planet Earth. Such as on the moon. Or on Mars. The future of human spaceflight is here and now. And it is real. Be a part of the adventure.
Hi, my name's Beth Healey, medical doctor for ESA at Concordia Station over the past year. Join me on my adventures in Antarctica and prepare yourself to leave this world.
All right. Well, that was suitably epic. Beth, where did Beth go? I play the video and Beth disappears. Well, that's too bad. Okay. So, again, that's what she does. I'm going to send her a quick email and hopefully she can sign back in. Again, she's joining us from the French Alps today, so the internet's having some real trouble. Sorry for the wait, guys. Thanks for your patience. And hopefully we can get her back in soon and maybe go really quickly to question and answer so you guys can actually ask her some neat things. So give me 2 seconds and we'll hopefully get Beth back in.
They're not really excited. What the heck?
Why don't they see us?
I don't know. He just said I can't see you. Yeah, I can see the classes. So I don't understand. This one again. This is like guys. No power on it. Lost the cameras. Let's put another one.
Well, she's trying to get back in.
Hey,
Hi, Beth.
I can't see you.
That's okay. We can see you.
You can see me. Oh, brilliant. Okay.
So
Sorry about that.
that's okay. I know we're having some troubles today. So we just played the video. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your journey and what you did there?
Cool, yeah, of course. So my name is Beth. I'm a medical doctor, and I've worked up in the Arctic, so sort of near the North Pole, and also at the South Pole, so in Antarctica. And I spent over a year in Antarctica last year, so I got back a year ago. And there I was working for the European Space Agency, where we were doing lots of research, looking at how a team is able to cope in sort of an extreme and remote environment. And we're doing all of this research because we believe that it will help us know more about some of the challenges that astronauts of the future may face when they're going further into space. So, for example, going on long missions to places like Mars. But I've spent lots of time working in very cold places. So I've also been up in the North Pole and in Greenland and Svalbard and Siberia. And that's all sort of working either as like a medical doctor in some cases or as part of a logistical support team. So that's kind of just a bit of background of the work that I do.
Excellent. Okay, so in the services of trying to make sure that this all goes well, what I think I'll do with that background and with the video is we can go to the classes and see if they have any questions about your role as a doctor, about your time in Antarctica, about any of the expeditions you've done. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll start with Mrs. Falkenjaw's class. If you guys have a question, go right ahead.
What inspired you to go on this journey?
What was that, sorry?
What inspired you to go on the journey?
Oh, well, for me, ever since I was really small, I've been really interested in going on expeditions and going to sort of remote environments. So I really love skiing. So I guess that was one of the reasons that I ended up going to all those sort of colder places. But I've always been excited by journeys and exploring more things. So I guess initially I was interested in like Antarctica and going to cold places because that's an area on the planet which hasn't been explored very much. But since working for European Space Agency, I've become really interested in exploring space as well. Because I think exploration is really exciting because we find out more about the planet that we're living on. And also it's a really interesting way of sort of developing new technologies and sort of inventing things to help us on those journeys, which not only help us go further, but also help us sort of life back on Earth as well in lots of different ways. So for me, I find that all really exciting.
Excellent. All right. So before I go to the next class, I should note that we have quite a few viewers that are watching live too. If you guys have questions, I have the live chat open on YouTube. So if you'd like to submit those questions, I can ask Beth myself, just so you know. We'll go next to Mr. Hatel's class. You guys have a
Hi
question? Go ahead.
guys.
Do you guys have a question?
We do.
So make sure you come right up to the camera and say it really loud, okay?
How do you use seeds in Mars? How do you like fertilize them to make them grow?
She's not talking about Mars yet. That's okay. Do you have any questions for her?
So I'm a doctor, so I look at kind of the human side, so more sort of how are the astronauts going to cope and sort of that side of things. So I'm not an expert on how we're going to grow things in Mars, but having said that, we use technology down in Antarctica on some of the bases, which is called hydroponic growing, and it's a way of growing plants where you don't need soil. So it's sort of really interesting way of growing food, and that might be one of the ways that we might be looking at growing things also on Mars as well. But I'm not an expert on that, I'm afraid.
Excellent. Okay, so I know that wasn't Mr. Hatel's class, that was Mrs. Tibshirani's class. Mr. Hatel, if you guys do have a question again and you want to ask it, you can go right ahead. I think everything's working. So, Beth, I don't know if you heard that. I can't hear the question. One thing you guys could try, if it's not working volume-wise, is there's a chat function in the top left, a little blue square. You can type your question there, and then we'll get it to her. Sorry if there's a little bit of a technical difficulty. In the meantime, we'll go to Mrs. Baker's class. If you guys have a question.
Hi, guys.
Sorry, hang on.
That's okay. Take your time.
Very sorry. How did you prepare your family and yourself to go on this Antarctic 12-month trip?
Sorry, I can.
Yeah, we can't hear that, guys. Sorry. So I'll take the first question for Mr. Hatel's class. Beth, so the question is, what precautions do you take when you go out into cold weather?
Okay, so when I was in Antarctica, it was minus 80 degrees centigrade when we went outside during the winter, so it's like really, really cold. So we have to be really careful about going outside because of the sort of extreme environment, and so we have to protect ourselves. So going outside is pretty serious, and so we have to wear loads of clothes. So I wore normally about 6 layers of clothing. On the outside, we wear like these big like overall sort of dungarees, and they've got like feathers in to keep us really, really warm. And then we use like a layering system, so it's much better to wear lots of smaller layers than to wear like one huge one. So underneath I'd wear lots of sort of thinner layers as well, because that all traps the heat. And I'd wear big mittens, and I'd wear sort of gloves underneath the mittens, and I had these huge, great big boots as well called baffin boots. And when I went outside, I didn't ever have any skin showing, because in those kind of temperatures, you would get frostbite, which is where your skin actually freezes. You get that really quickly, so you have to be super careful when you're going outside. And in that respect, living in Antarctica is a little bit like living in space as well. So when astronauts go outside, they have to wear all of these clothes, and it makes them sort of big and cumbersome, and it's really hard to move around. And it's also really hard to do things with your hands as well, because you have like these huge mittens on. And so if you want to do anything like writing, for example, it becomes really, really difficult. So you have to change the way that you use your hands as well, and that can be a bit of a challenge. And also, with all of those clothes on, it makes it really claustrophobic as well. So, you know, when you go outside in America, when you go outside, you get all that fresh air, and it's really nice to sort of breathe in fresh air, and you feel, so it kind of wakes you up. It's kind of the opposite when you go outside in a place like Antarctica, because you feel really claustrophobic, and it's actually when you go inside that you're able to take like a nice big deep breath of fresh air and sort of really relax as well. So it's kind of an interesting experience. And in those kind of temperatures, if you throw like a cup of tea, it'll like freeze. So it's really, before it touches the ground. So it's really, really cold.
Excellent. Okay, so from home, we've got a question from Mr. Waterhouse's class from Bella. How do you get water if it's frozen everywhere?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that's a real challenge for a lot of the polar expeditions. So when people are out camping especially, you have to melt all of your snow, so you need loads of energy to do that. So it can be really tough and it takes time, and you really have to think about sort of when you'll need water and sort of save a lot of it so that you're not constantly having to melt it. In Concordia station, which is the station that I was at, we actually had a water recycling machine as well. And this is another thing that astronauts use up in space. So we actually developed some of the technology and the machine which they use up on the International Space Station from Antarctica. So we developed some of the techniques, and it's one of these sort of prototypes for the one that's used up on the International Space Station that we use down there. So we actually recycle probably about 90% of our water in Antarctica, and that means that we don't have to melt it all the time.
Perfect. We'll go out west to Mr. Warkoch's class if you guys have a question.
Yeah, Jesse, we have 2 classes. Can we just have 2 questions?
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Hey guys.
Go first, Jack. Hey, this is Jack.
Hi.
How long have you been a doctor for?
Me? So I qualified 5 years ago. So, yeah. So 5 years I've been a doctor, but I was studying for 6 years at university before that. So I kind of started, so 11 years ago, I started sort of my career in medicine, I guess. Yeah.
All right, go right ahead, guys. Yeah.
This is Angus.
Hi.
Have you ever
Say it louder, Angus.
have you ever helped someone that's got badly hurt?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I mean, so I'm a doctor, and I've spent time working in the emergency department. So we see lots of sick people there. So yeah, and it's really rewarding. It's a really great career because of that, because I find it really nice to sort of go to work and feel like you've done something to sort of help someone else and look after them. So I guess that's one of the reasons that I love my job, really. Fortunately, out in Antarctica and these sort of more on expeditions, fortunately, we don't see as many accidents as we do in hospitals. So in terms of my work sort of medically, I do a lot less in terms of treating people, but I also have other roles within the team. So for example, doing the research that I was doing down in Antarctica.
Perfect. All right, we'll go to Mrs. Metcalf's class. If you guys have a question, go right ahead. I don't know if it's letting me mute. Sorry, just quickly, it's not letting me demute your microphone, so there'll be a little symbol on your screen where you can press it. And there you go.
Hi, my name is Kaylee.
Hey, Kaylee.
Google, it's asking a question now.
What was it like to live without sunlight for so long?
It was really hard. So I'd spent lots of time working up in the Arctic, and I was really used to having sunshine all the time. So all the way through the night, so 24 hours of sunshine. And to be honest, that didn't affect me too much because it's really easy to kind of block out the sun. So you can wear like those like eye patch things. And I was able to kind of sleep normally. But when I went to Antarctica and had the 24 hours of nighttime, so we had 105 days in a row where I didn't see the sun at all. And I find that really hard because it was really difficult to keep your sort of sleep-wake cycle normal. So I would find that I would get like really, really sleepy at lunchtime or in the evening. But then when I was supposed to go to sleep during the nighttime, I'd find it really, really hard to go to sleep. So you're constantly sort of wanting to sleep at funny times of the day. And so you never really get enough sleep. And also you never really feel like you properly wake up because it's kind of like being in a dark room, you know. It's you know, when you go outside, you get that sort of, and you see the sun, it wakes you up. You don't really get that in Antarctica during that time. So you feel like you're kind of hibernating the whole time. And I got it's very hard to do lots of things. You get really sleepy and you don't have a lot of motivation. So to do things like going to the gym and that sort of thing, which normally I really enjoy, I'd much rather kind of, you know, just sit and watch a film or do something like that. So you have to be really strict with yourself to make sure that you sort of still keep on going and doing everything that you normally do. And also it's really strange as well, because when you look up in the sky and you see the sun, it kind of connects you with home, because you see the sun wherever you are in the world, and when you lose that, it's a really weird feeling, because you feel really disconnected with all your friends and family and sort of life back home. So when the sun came back, I really felt like it sort of reconnected me back to all my friends and family, and it's kind of nice.
Excellent. So Miss Baker's class joined us again. I know that we couldn't hear you guys last time, so if you want to try the chat function in the top left and write your question, that would be great. In the meantime, back to Mr. Waterhouse's class from Katie. Did you ever want to leave Antarctica and go home, Beth?
Well, I did really miss all my friends and family, and I think everybody down there did. I think, I really enjoyed the experience overall, and sometimes you have hard days, but we could Skype with sort of friends and family at home, so I could sort of see them online. And of course, some days I did want to go home, but I think overall, I would never, if I had had the option to leave, I wouldn't have chosen to leave during the time there. So in general, it was really great experience, and I really enjoyed it. But I mean, in Antarctica as well, you can't leave during the winter because of the temperatures. It means that the planes can't fly in to get you. So even if I had have wanted to leave, I wouldn't have been able to. So you don't really think about it too much because of that, because you know that you can't.
Excellent. Okay, so we'll go back to Mrs. Haagen-Dawes' class. If you guys have a question, go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Samantha.
Hey.
Hi. My question is, what was your favorite and least favorite place to visit during your exploration?
It's a difficult question, because I like all places for different reasons. I mean, I love skiing. So for me, I guess probably Greenland is my favorite place, because I've had really exciting opportunity to get to go and do lots of skiing there, and the mountains are really beautiful. And also I like Greenland because you also have the local sort of Inuit population there as well, and I find it really interesting to sort of meet people from different cultures and sort of see how they live. So when I was actually a medical student, I had the chance to go and work in a local Inuit hospital, and the culture is really different, and just getting to experience that and meet sort of hunters and people that have been living in Greenland their whole lives was super interesting as well. So for me, probably Greenland, but having said that, Antarctica was also amazing, because I always wanted to go there, and I got to see sort of penguins hanging out and things like that as well. So I mean, I like traveling. Everywhere I go, there's something new and something different that I like to see. So it's a really difficult question. And in terms of places I don't like, I guess, I don't know, I haven't, I guess cities in general, I prefer the, being outside and sort of finding out new things. So I'll say probably that.
Excellent. All right, so Mrs. Baker's class got some questions in. Justin asked, what medicine is yet to be discovered in order to handle extreme conditions?
What medicine? Well, I guess, what we're doing at the moment, and one of the reasons we're using Antarctica is the fact that so in terms of space flight, if an astronaut is to have a medical problem, currently we can evacuate them really quickly. So if they have a problem at lunchtime, hopefully we'll be able to get them home by the evening, because we have the Soyuz spacecraft, which we're able to sort of evacuate people on. But now we're looking at going further away. So for example, going to the moon or to Mars, it's not going to be possible to get people back so quickly. So we're having to change the kind of medical models that we're using. So before we're just looking at the immediate stage, so sort of immediate kind of life support, but now we're looking at having to do more stuff, because we're going to have to look after people for longer if they have any problems. So that's why we're interested in Antarctica, because it's the same thing there, because we're not able to evacuate people quickly. So all the things that we're really looking at is looking after people for longer periods of time, which we haven't had the sort of capability to do before. So we're doing things like telemedicine, which is a way of using Skype. So as a doctor, there's lots of specialities. And so as a doctor, you wouldn't ever know everything. And so we're able to sort of access different specialities to help us with sort of complicated problems and sort of ask other experts. And so it's really developing the ways that we're able to do that, which is what we're looking at most at the moment. And also kind of the psychological and physical impact of sort of being isolated for such a long period of time, because it's pretty, it's pretty tough on the people doing it, so for the astronauts.
All right, so speaking of going to Mars, that you mentioned there, another student, Abigail, in Mrs. Baker's class, asked, how would someone prepare to go to Mars? What kind of training would they need to go through?
Oh, so lots and lots of training. I mean, we haven't, so that's another thing. So we're working towards sort of working out how to train people for such an experience. We haven't got all the answers to the questions yet. So that's why we're doing all the research to kind of look and see what challenges astronauts are going to face and see how we can overcome them. So that's a lot of what we're doing in Antarctica. So there's a lot of things that we still don't know yet. And it's going to be a huge challenge sending a team to Mars. One of the biggest things we're looking at is like selecting people before they go. So try and sort of make sure that problems don't occur rather than trying to sort of overcome problems when they do occur. So selection is really, really important. And also the training they have, so things like, well, before we went to Antarctica, we had what's called human behavior performance training. And this is the same training that astronauts get before they go to space, and it's all about how to live and work effectively as part of a team. And so that's one of the biggest challenges, being in a small, cramped environment, in isolation, you really need to be able to get on well. So that's one of the big things that we're looking at. And looking at other technologies and things which will be able to improve health during the mission as well.
Excellent. Okay, so I know Mrs. Tibshirani's class had written a question earlier, but we can hear you guys perfectly fine. So if you guys want to ask your question live, you'll have to demute your own mic. I don't know what's going wrong with my computer, but if you guys want to ask a question, go right ahead.
In one sentence, how do you explain living in Antarctica for a year?
Oh, very cold, I guess.
Very cold, I guess. There you go. All right. They disappeared a minute ago, but Mr. Hatel's class asked, what was the biggest problem you had and how did you overcome it?
Ooh, biggest problem. That's difficult to say. I guess the biggest challenge for everyone is like the human side. So being able to work effectively in a team for a long period of time in isolation means that it's a real challenge for everyone to both be considerate about how you are as a person and also sort of understanding how other people are reacting and why they might be reacting, and looking out for other people as well. So, if someone's having a bad day, sort of, making sure that you're there for them and you're able to sort of help, sort of make them feel better. And just being aware of how you're acting, if something's irritating someone else, kind of stopping doing it where it's possible, and just being as considerate as you can. And, that's a challenge, like, for 12 months. It's easy for a day, but sort of sustaining that kind of just consideration for other people and understanding as well. Because there's lots of challenges, also because we're an international crew as well. So we had lots of different languages, and so it's really important to try and learn other people's languages so that you could sort of that you weren't always expecting someone else to speak your language, and having consideration for other people's cultures as well, and sort of embracing that as a crew. So definitely, I think the human side is much more of a challenge than the cold.
Two quick things before we take the next question. One is just to say thank you so much, Beth, so far. I know we can't see you, but we can hear you great, and it's been wonderful.
I'm really sorry I can't see me.
That's okay. Technology. Second is to say that I love the questions. We have a backlog of like 6 questions already, so I'm going to try and get in as many as we can. First, we'll go to Mr. Workoch's class. If one of your 2 classes has any more questions, go right ahead.
We have another question. Okay, hang on. Yeah.
Have you seen any penguins?
Okay, we'll ask that. Okay, we had one question that just kept coming up. It's not really a doctor question, but a lot of the kids in the class want to know if you've seen any animals in Antarctica.
Yes, I have. So I've seen, what did I see? I saw lots of penguins, which was amazing. That was the best thing. I love penguins. So I saw emperor penguins, and I saw baby emperor penguins, and I saw adelies, which are like really, really small penguins. And I also saw seals as well. And I saw some whales too, so some orcas.
Great, thank you.
Really great.
Okay, hands down.
Mr. Warkach, you guys have 2 classes there. If you have a second question, go right ahead.
Great.
Has she helped like broken legs?
Oh, okay. Can I just ask for you? Okay. They want to know, Beth, if you, when you were in Antarctica, if you ever had to help anyone that had like a broken leg or a broken arm, something like that.
We didn't have anyone with big breaks, so someone had a broken toe. So we helped with that, but fortunately nobody broke anything, which is really great. It's interesting because actually when you know that you're isolated, people change their risk-taking behavior as well. So, you know, people are a little bit more cautious than you might be back here in sort of America, because you know that if you have a problem and if you break your arm, it's going to be sort of 9 months before you're able to get to a hospital. So, so I think people adjust how sort of the risks that they're taking, which means that in general you have less accidents. Having said that, you know, if you do have an accident, it's a lot more serious than it would be back home as well, because you don't have the same kind of support.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So Mr. Hattel's class asked, how is the climate on Mars similar to Antarctica?
Oh, well, the temperatures are similar. And it depends where you are. So at Concordia, it's supposed to be one of the most similar places. And that's, so basically in Antarctica, at Concordia, we've never found any life to exist. So not even like bacteria outside. So I mentioned that I'd seen some animals in Antarctica, but that was at the coast. So that wasn't actually in Concordia, because Concordia is an inland station. And so one of the experiments we're actually doing was looking to find any extreme bacteria that can survive in the environment there. So sort of because these kind of bacteria that can survive in an environment like Concordia may also be able to survive on a different planet. So for example, Mars, and they can, so this experiment can help inform us about some of the things that we might expect to find on a planet like Mars.
Excellent. All right. So a question from a viewer live too. Again, Mr. Waterhouse's class. Avery asked, since the ground is frozen, where does the stuff go when you're done in the bathroom?
So because the Antarctic Treaty, it actually all goes into a big container and it freezes outside, and then we ship it all out at the end of the winter time. So that's to make sure that we keep everything all clean and pristine in Antarctica, because it's, you know, because we don't want to change the natural habitat that we have there.
Excellent. We haven't gone to Mrs. Metcalf's class in a while. Sorry, if you guys have a question, go right ahead.
If they asked you to go to Mars, would you go?
I would actually. So that was something that I had never thought about doing before I had the experience going to Antarctica. But I mean, I would only go if there was a return ticket though, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but some organizations have been talking about sending people sort of on a one-way trip to Mars. For me, that doesn't interest me, because I don't feel like, I don't know, I just think it's more important about what you're able to bring home from a journey. And, you know, I would want to be coming home afterwards. So for sure I'd go, but only with a return ticket.
Excellent. All right, we have another class talking live. So this is from Trinity Academy. A third grader asks if your heart beats slower or faster in Antarctica.
It pretty much beats the same. But you know, I got a pretty fast heart rate when I saw Antarctica for the first time, because I was so excited to see it. But in general, your heart rate is the same. A few other things are different. So we're actually at altitude at Concordia, so it's a bit like living at the top of Mont Blanc. as a mountain, even though it's completely flat there, which means that our oxygen levels are a lot lower than we have back at sea level. So that was one thing that was noticeably changed for the entire time that we were there. And another experiment we were doing was looking at the effect of the sort of isolation and the stress on our blood pressure. But that's something that we're still sort of looking at the results of, and we haven't got any sort of firm ideas of what it showed.
All right, so Mrs. Baker and Mr. Hatel's class have so many questions, it's ridiculous. I love it. So Mrs. Baker will take one from their class. Your team in Antarctica, what skills do the 12 people have? You're a doctor. Did anyone else have any other specializations?
Yeah, so we had lots of different specialties. So we actually had 2 doctors in Antarctica on our base, which was exciting. So that meant that we could do lots of different. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, it just stopped doing something. Okay, so 2 doctors was important because it means that we can do surgery and lots of things like that together. Other people we had a plumber, we had an electrician, we had a sort of chief of the mechanical team. We had a chef down there, and then we had lots of different scientists as well. So we had scientists looking at astronomy, and we had scientists which were looking at the ice down there, so glaciologists. And we also had ones which were looking at the seismic activity on the ice as well. So that's looking at sort of earthquake type signs as well.
Perfect. Mr. Hatel's class asked, how do you get the medicine you need when you run out?
Well, that's another thing because so we're completely isolated for 9 months. So we have to think about what we'll need before we go down there. So if we do run out of anything during that 9 months, it's not possible to get anything into Concordia during that time. So we have to be really, really careful and really plan what we're going to take before the isolation starts. And so in general, we take a lot more than we think we're going to need, so that we don't run out. But it's a big consideration, especially for spaceflight as well, because obviously it's very expensive to get materials both into space and into Antarctica, so you have to be very careful in that respect. And also on a long duration mission into space, you're not going to have very much space on a spaceship as well. So we're learning a lot from Antarctica about what we need for that period of isolation to help inform us about what to pack for a long duration mission into space as well.
All right. We'll go back to Mrs. Haagendaw's class. If you guys have another question. Go right ahead.
Anybody got one? I think they're done.
They're good? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll go to Mrs. Metcalf's class again. If you guys have another question, come on up.
We have a couple of questions. They've been writing them down on paper for me. They want to know how was your travels from home to Antarctica? How did you get there? And they're also asking what you're working on now.
Okay. So in terms of getting there, I got sort of a normal commercial flight from the UK, which is where I was based, which went via Singapore to New Zealand. And then from New Zealand, I got a smaller plane, so it's called a Hercules plane, from New Zealand to the coast of Antarctica. And then I got a really, really small plane called a Twin Otter plane. And I got that from the coast to the station that I was working at. But during the summer of the next summer when I finished, I did what's called a big overland traverse, and that's actually driving these big caterpillar tractors across the Antarctic plateau. So that was for 1,200 kilometers, driving sort of through Antarctica. So that's another way you can get there. And I actually got a boat on my journey home. So I went from the coast of Antarctica back to New Zealand by boat, which took sort of a week and a half to do that. But I really enjoyed that. It was brilliant to sort of go in a boat through all the sea ice. So that was really great. And right now I'm living in Chamonix, which is in the French Alps. And I'm working I'm working in emergency medicine back in the UK, but out here in France, I'm learning French so that I can work out in France. And so that's what I'm doing at the moment.
Excellent. So we've had one class have to leave already because their schedule, and another one's going to be leaving soon. So I'm going to do one more question, and then what we do is we'll turn it over to all the classes to say a big thank you. So first, and we want to get this official from you, is there a date when we might travel to Mars from Jackson in North Carolina in Mrs. Baker's class?
That's an interesting question. It's very topical at the moment because lots of sort of dates are coming out as to possible missions and when we might go. I'm hoping that we will go to Mars within the next 30 years, I think. That's kind of my estimation, but we will see. It could well be a long time before that, especially because there's lots of commercial operations now which are looking at going, so I think that might sort of speed up the process a little bit, but we will see.
Excellent. All right, so thank you so much, Beth. What I'll do now is I'll demute the microphones of Mrs. Haagenjoss, Mr. Warkotches, Mrs. Metcalf, all the classes. If you guys want to say a big thank you to Beth. Awesome. All right. So Beth, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. I really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for all the really good questions.
And we hope to have you all explore